Good evening, everyone. This is Darren with SimNation, just doing another Zero to Hero Draft Day Sports College Football 2025 video. So recruiting is over. Before I move on and talk about training camp and position changes and things like that, one of the things I forgot to mention in the last video around recruiting is there are two forms of recruiting. There's the regular season recruiting, and then there's the off-season recruiting. Um, One of the things you want to be careful of with the off-season recruiting is that those dollars go against your regular season recruiting that's coming up in the new season. So don't overspend, I guess is probably the more of the story here. Because the more you spend there, the less you're going to have during the regular season when the player base is going to be essentially reset and you'll have access to all the new recruiting class for that year. Whereas what you're doing in the off-season recruiting is you're getting the last remnants of the recruiting class from the previous regular season. So I forgot to mention that. I probably should have, and I apologize, but just want to bring that up. Okay, so for those of you not familiar with the series, this is a series where I take a team that has massively underperformed, and I try to turn it into a playoff team, literally in just a few short months. So the Zero to Hero is essentially I take the team at the season flip, I hire coaches, I do some off-season recruiting, I do training camp, and then I'm right into the regular season. So normally I am flipping the roster pretty massively. I think this time around I cut somewhere around 40 players. Um, and I recruited a whole bunch of players in. As you can see, you normally wouldn't see this many um, folks being coming in. So what I'm going to show you today is training camp. So for those not familiar with the game, training camp is the best time to do position changes, especially offense to defense or defense to offense. You get the most lift, and also it's where you start to really get your roster ready because right after training camp is going to be the regular season where you'll have to start playing. And you can see that hill. So the next one will be the regular season begins. So the first thing I normally do is I look at who I got. So we'll go to roster. So the roster looks much better than when I first got it and started getting rid of people. It's still not quite the team I want. I have to make some fundamental decisions pretty quickly. Manning, who I was pretty big on, actually turned out to not be a really good passer at all. Pretty bad, actually, but he's got great speed, and I'm going to be able to use that. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to start making my position changes, and I'm going to go through this relatively fast, but I'll try to explain some things. So when I look at this, I need to make a fundamental decision. Am I going to be an accuracy team or am I going to be an arm team? Arm means long passing, accuracy means short passing. The reality is at the end of the day, I'm probably going to go with arm because I have Houston, who's got a pretty good arm. He's got decent intelligence. It's not great. And I have Glenn, who, again, has a decent arm. I can get away with some things. Plus, Glenn's really fast. Manning is not going to be playing quarterback. He's not good enough for it. He's not really good for much, but we're going to move Manning to cornerback. And the reason why is he can't really tackle. But at the same time, he's got really good speed. 89 speed is really good in many cases. And then I'm just going to have to make sure that when I do my game planning, if something happens to Glenn in Houston, I'm going to have to switch to an accuracy-based offense. Now, I have a lot of running backs, and you're probably like, wow, Darren, why did you get so many running backs? Well, remember, when I was doing the recruiting, I had to go with what I could get. And there weren't many good corners left, or not many good free safeties. So I got a lot of these guys on the auspice of I was going to move them to defense. So like Boren is going to go to defense, and he's got good tackling for corner. If this was around 50 or 60, I would actually make him a safety. And that's one of the things that you're going to look at throughout this is who do you want to. Now, if a guy has decent hands being above 50, you'll want to keep him. Like, I'm not going to move Waylon to defense. I'm going to keep him as a running back. Um, but most of these guys are going to go to defense and then I'll figure it out. So Right now, I'm thinking most of these are going to end up being cornerbacks. I may make a change at some point. So that guy will go to cornerback. We'll look at him, 93 speed, not decent agility actually. Um, his tackling's horrible, but you know what? I'm gonna move him to free safety because I tend to use free safeties in coverage, and as a result of that, I can probably have him really do something good for me though. Same thing, not good hands. He's got okay agility, so I'm gonna move him over to cornerback. And I apologize that you guys are having to watch me do all this. Normally I would do this and then show it to you, but some of you asked me to actually go through the whole process. And for those of you who complain, it's their fault. But uh, again, Groves is going to be a good corner. So I'm just going to move him again. And again, the reason why I'm doing this now during training camp is I want to get the most lift from training camp on improving these people. Holt. Uh, You know what? I'm gonna leave Holt as a running back for now. I'll make a decision on him later. No, let's move him. So again, corner. I'm gonna probably have more corners than I want, honestly, but I can live with that. And then this will leave me with Glockalos. I can actually get rid of him. Get rid of him. He's got really good agility though. Hmm. I'm gonna do something strange with him. I'm gonna make him a linebacker, and I'm just gonna give him time to develop. I'm going to get rid of Galacticos because there's just no point in keeping him. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is if somebody's a transfer, you can't cut them. I need to test. You may be able to cut them in a future season. Don't take my word on that. I have to actually test that. But in the season that you get them, you can't cut them. And that's something that maybe I'll have a conversation with the developers or just give that feedback. But I also know why they did it, and I honestly don't disagree with them. I know some people do, but normally you're not going to cut a transfer because they're transferring into your school, right? Although in real life that does actually happen. So I'm going to go with essentially 5 running backs. I'm good with that. 4 back, no changes here. These guys are going to be what they are. Tight end, again, not the greatest tight end class. I need to find one more tight end and I'll figure that one out. It's probably going to come from wide receiver. So what I'm looking for here is someone who has good run blocking, and none of them really do. This guy's probably the closest. So we're going to make Stevens a tight end, and then go from there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'd like to have 8 wide receivers because I run 4 wide receiver sets. It gives me 2 depth at all that. This isn't the greatest wide receiver core, but I do have speed and I do have hands. I'm not going to make any changes, so I'm just going to leave them alone. Guards, again, it's not bad. I knew that going in. Tackle, the only guy who isn't going to stay here is going to be Barr. I'm just going to, we'll move Barr to defensive tackle because he's got decent strength. And then all those guys are good. Leave them alone. I have the right depth. I have 3 depth. That's what I want at center. Traditionally, on the offensive line, I want to have at least 5 tackles, 5 guards. That gives me a 2 deep plus 1 who can go across the line. And then at center, I tend to like to have 3 deep. Punters, 2 deep. I'm not making changes here. Kickers, not making changes. I don't normally position change kickers and punters, by the way. Now, defensive tackle wise, I'm not going to do much here because of the fact that I have already moved people. It's a little bit bigger than I want it to be, so I might be looking for someone who has a little bit more speed, who may not be as strong. Someone like maybe Monzo, who's a freshman. I may move him to defensive end. I'll take a look at that real quick and just see what I've got there. Yeah, I'm going to move Monzo to I mean, his strength isn't great, his agility is not great, but he's got decent speed. He's really more of a defensive end, even though he's on kind of the heavy side of a defensive end. Normally, you don't want a defensive end to be less over 300, but he moves well for a 300-pound person. Um, and then the rest, I could get rid of some of these guys, honestly, if I wanted to. Like Casillas isn't quite what I want, but uh, we'll let it play out for now. I'm going to carry a little bit more depth, and then during the season, I make some cuts depending on how I feel about certain things. The other thing is if you're going to make cuts, now's the time to do it because recruiting hasn't started, and in theory, you get the scholarship and you should be able to do that. I know a lot of people right now are complaining about negative recruiting balances. That happens when you overpay your coaches. And there's nothing really you can do about it because once you get out of staff signing, the money is spent, which means you're going to have to deal with it for the rest of the season. Don't cut your coaches because you got to get new ones, and that's just going to make it worse. So what it means is you can offer scholarships, but you won't be able to actually recruit people if you have a negative thing. And there's not much that commissions can do about that. That's a piece of feedback I'll give Wolverine Studios, but at the end of the day, it is what it is, and you're just going to have to figure out how to offer scholarships to people that other people aren't going out and hope you can get them. I've actually done that. I did that with Texas Tech, for those who remember, and I did it with Colorado. Well, I had a negative recruiting bonus because I overspent in the off season, and I was able to actually bring in quite a bit of talent because I focused on very specific people. So it is possible to do it, but it is also very painful. Um, we're going to leave defensive tackle alone. Defensive end, right here, what I'm looking for is do I have anybody who has decent enough speed that might want to move to linebacker? I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it alone. Linebacker wise, I am coming in a little bit heavy. Again, linebacker to me is kind of like wide receiver. I want at least a two deep. I'm probably going to carry a little bit more, but like I'm going to get rid of Laura. He's just not really that good. In fact, he's really bad. So we'll go ahead and cut him. And then we'll just look across the board. This isn't the ideal situation for my linebackers, but it gives me enough talent. If I wanted to, I could look at someone here and potentially move someone to defensive end. And I might do that actually. So let's just move Cawthorn to defensive end. He's a little bit on the light side, but we'll see. Traditionally, when you want to move people from linebacker to defensive end, you want them to have 60 or above strength. If they're below 50, they're not going to really be all that great unless they just somehow manage to get around the linemen. Cornerback, I got decent depth here. As you can see, it's a really good cornerback class. Now, they are going to get me a lot of penalties. And we'll talk about the skill here in a second, and I'll show you what I'm going to do there. Strong safety, again, not really all that good. So I'm going to go back to cornerback, and I'm going to look to find someone who's a decent tackler. So like Groves, we're going to move Groves. In a perfect world, I would notice that they have strong safety. And if they do, that's the perfect guy to move. Or if it's a free safety, it would be free safety. But because I'm moving so many people from offense to defense, it's just not going to work out for me. So the other thing is like I could look at Mosley to see about moving him. But again, he doesn't really have anything skill-wise. So I'm going to just have to operate under the auspice that I'm going to draw penalties. I'm probably going to get rid of these. I'll keep him because he's got good agility. But I'm going to get rid of the other guy because I want to free up the scholarship. Free safety wise, as you can see, it's decent. It's not great, but I got one speedster, and then I got another guy who's a really good tackler who can play in the box if I need to. See how many I got here? 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. It's good. So now I've made all my position changes. And as you notice, most of them are running back to defense. That's normally a dynamic you'll see. So now I'm ready to go in and do training. So we'll click on training. Now the key with training, and if you're ever not sure, this kind of gives you the idea that positional drills are about how to improve the skills. So for people who have very low skill, I'm probably going to put like a 6 though. Athletic training is if you want to get people to get faster or more agile. Physical is if you want to be stronger or have better endurance. Game tape is intelligence. The key here is you don't want to go over 22 in aggregate here. If you do, you're going to burn the player out. The other thing here is make sure you understand what your coaches are good at. So like head coach focus, offensive coach focus, defensive coach focus. What I would go here is I'd go and look and see what is Jimmy Landrum good at developing. He's not really a development coach. I'm kind of wondering why I have him, to be honest, but we'll leave that alone for now. So I'll pick a freshman and let him do that. Sean Bryant is really good at physical, so that's like lineman types. Skill positions, this is running back, wide receiver. I could have him coach up a quarterback if I wanted him to, but I'll let my quarterback coach deal with that. And then this guy's really good at linebacker. So that's just something for me to remember while I'm doing training. So what I may say is normally I try to do the person who's the best one or the one that I think will give me the best lift. Um, so like in this case, I focus on sophomores and freshmen. So we'll do Brisno. So we'll just go here, we'll find Mr. Brisno, wherever he is. There he is. So Fidel will get it. On this one, I'm going to focus on a quarterback. So let's just say arm. I'm going to pick the one that needs a little bit of intelligence. So we're going to pick Houston in this case. And then I'm just going to have the head coach focus on a running back who is we'll have him focus on Conley. Conley's well, still haven't focused on Conley. He's a cornerback. I don't know why I thought he was a running back. Probably moved him, and that's why it's still registering in my head. There he is, John Conley. So I inherited whoever had this team before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new schedule. I'm going to call this one essentially my skill one. So I'm going up to 22. I normally stay at 20 to be honest, only because I don't want to burn people out. But let's just call this skill. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. I'm going to find all the people who don't have skill. And I am going to go ahead and assign the training to these people. And my general rule of thumb is anybody under 50 is going to get it. Because they are not skilled enough for me. So we will assign selected, and now you notice this changes the skill, and they're in good shape. I'm going to create one that is physical. So let's do this, and we'll just call this one physical. And then this will be for, well, I'll bump this to 6, I'll bump this to 6, and I will now go out and look at anybody who doesn't have good endurance that I have not already signed a schedule to. So again, I'm looking for people less than 60. Make sure I don't hit someone who has skill. Good news is I think there's only one left, so we'll just do up to there. And then I'm going to assign, and now those guys are on physical, and then everyone else is going to be on default. I'm going to keep default at 20 because I just don't want to burn people out, and that's kind of how you do training camp. Now, let me go ahead and export this real quick. So now what should happen after this is when I run the sim in a moment, I've got to exit out and then come back in and do the imports. When I run the sim, it will come back and tell everyone in the league essentially how they did. Most of my players should see an increase in the areas I want. It won't be as pronounced as maybe I want it because if I remember correctly with Notre Dame, I don't have a great trainer. Mostly because I don't think I really could afford one. So it's not going to be as high, and plus Jimmy Landrum is not very good at development. So at the end of the day, we're going to see what it is. Now, once I start thinking about recruiting, we'll talk about that in the next video. Bear in mind, I'm only going to have like 1.2 million left, so I'm going to have to be very careful with how I recruit. If I were to show you Maryland, Maryland has like $5 million for recruiting. They're not going to have an issue recruiting anybody because Maryland has one of the biggest budgets in the game. But we'll talk about that in the next video. So hopefully this helps you with how do you set your roster. After this, of course, we will get ready for the regular season. Week 1 will be the sim after this. Before that sim runs, I'll actually do a thing on playbooks about how I'm going to build the playbook for them and who starts, who doesn't. But hopefully you find this video helpful, and if you do, just let me know. Or if you have questions, let me know. If you want to join this league, it's a really good league. The information is in the link. We'd love to have you. We have some really good teams. You may be a little frustrated because if you get a CPU team, CPU is notorious for mismanaging the budgets, and you may end up with a negative budget. But I would say that it really will teach you really how to do like a zero to hero, because when you have a negative recruiting budget, you've got to be very precise. And of course, in the next video, I'll also talk about recruiting. So have a good night, and we'll catch up with you later.